They say the roads have memories, that the asphalt whispers secrets only the lost can hear. If you're ever driving alone at night and you see a woman standing in the middle of the road, don't stop, don't look, and whatever you do, never take a left. It was past midnight when Ryan found himself on a lonely, winding road deep in the countryside. The only sounds were the hum of his engine and the occasional rustling of trees in the wind. He had taken this route before, but tonight, something felt different. The road signs looked unfamiliar. The darkness pressed heavier against his windshield, and the GPS, once his guide, blinked erratically before shutting off completely. A deep unease settled in his chest. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, telling himself it was just exhaustion. Then, in the distance, he saw her, a lone woman in a flowing white dress, standing perfectly still on the road ahead. Her hood was pulled low, obscuring her face. Ryan's headlights cast a golden glow on her as he slowed down. Something about her posture sent a cold shiver up his spine. Her arms were limp at her sides, her head slightly tilted as if listening to something he couldn't hear. His instincts screamed at him to keep driving, to swerve around her and never look back. But his hands betrayed him. Before he realized what he was doing, his foot pressed the brake and his van rolled to a stop just feet from her. The silence that followed was deafening. She didn't move, didn't flinch, just stood there, facing him, her hooded head slightly turned as if she could see right through the glass, through him. The longer he waited, the heavier the air became. It was thick, suffocating. His fingers hovered over the door lock, but before he could press it, the woman slowly lifted one arm. A pale, bony finger pointed down the road to the left. Ryan swallowed hard. Something in his gut told him that turning left was a mistake. His knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. His right turn signal flickered on. But as soon as it did, the woman moved. Not a step, not a lurch, but a sudden, impossible shift. One moment she was outside his van, the next she was standing directly in front of his windshield. Ryan gasped, slamming the van into reverse. His heart pounded as the headlights illuminated her face for the first time. Except there was no face, just a smooth, featureless void beneath the hood. A grotesque emptiness where eyes, a nose, a mouth should be. His vision blurred with terror. His foot jammed against the accelerator, and the van jolted backward. But the woman didn't move. She simply stood there, head tilted, the invisible gaze locked onto him. The van's tires screeched as Ryan yanked the wheel and sped away, choosing the left turn just to escape her. The road twisted and stretched into an endless tunnel of darkness, the trees closing in on either side. His breaths came in short, panicked gasps. He glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see her standing in the middle of the road. But she wasn't there. For a moment, relief washed over him. Maybe it was just his mind playing tricks on him. Maybe he was overtired. Then something clicked in his brain. His van's interior lights were on. His throat clenched. Slowly, his eyes shifted to the passenger seat. She was there, sitting beside him, her hood still up, her faceless head tilted ever so slightly in his direction. Ryan screamed. The van swerved wildly as he fought to regain control, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He refused to look at her again, gripping the wheel so tightly his hands ached. His pulse thundered in his ears. His only thought, get out, get out, get out. His headlights cut through the thickening mist ahead, revealing a strange sight. A van. His van. Parked in the middle of the road. Identical in every way. Same scratches on the bumper. Same stickers on the rear windshield. Ryan's mind reeled. How was that possible? His heart pounded as he slammed on the brakes, tires screeching in protest. He wasn't moving forward anymore. He was back where he started. The passenger seat was empty. The woman was gone. But before relief could sink in, a whisper slithered through the air. Soft, distant, yet impossibly close. You shouldn't have taken the left. The dashboard lights flickered. The van engine sputtered and died. A deep, unnatural silence settled in, pressing against his ears. His breath hitched. Then, the van's headlights flickered back on, illuminating the road ahead. She was standing there again. Closer this time. No longer hooded. No longer faceless. Her mouth stretched wide into a grin far too large for any human. And she was looking right at him. Ryan's body refused to move. His breath hitched in his throat as he stared at her. This thing that was no longer just a woman in a hood. The grin on her face stretched too wide, her hollow black eyes swallowing the light from his headlights. Every part of him screamed to run, but his hands felt glued to the wheel. His legs were frozen in place. The air inside the van grew thick, heavy, like he was sinking into something unseen. The woman took a slow, deliberate step forward. The crunch of gravel beneath her feet echoed unnaturally in the silence. Another step, closer and closer. His heartbeat slammed against his ribs. The pressure in his chest made it hard to breathe. Then she lifted a single finger and pointed behind him. Ryan's stomach twisted. His skin crawled with the unbearable feeling that someone was inside the van again. He didn't want to look. He knew he shouldn't look. But the silence stretched too long, too empty, and against every ounce of logic in his mind, he turned his head. The rearview mirror showed nothing, just the empty back seats. But when his eyes flickered back to the windshield, she was gone. The road was empty again. No sign of her. No footprints in the dirt. Just nothing. His chest rose and fell in uneven gasps as he fumbled with the keys, trying to restart the van. The engine sputtered, coughed, but refused to turn over. A cold sweat trickled down the back of his neck. His fingers trembled as he twisted the key again. Click! The van's lights shut off. Total darkness swallowed everything. Ryan's breathing turned to ragged gasps. He smacked the dashboard, trying to get the lights back on. Nothing. No headlights, no radio, just the empty black void surrounding him. Then something moved. A slow, dragging sound. Ryan's entire body tensed. The sound was faint, deliberate, like nails scraping against fabric. It came from the back seat. His fingers dug into the steering wheel. He didn't want to turn. He didn't want to see. But something breathed against his ear. A soft, shallow inhale, so close he could feel the cold whisper of it against his skin. His entire body locked up in terror. He forced himself to move, to reach for the door handle. His fingers brushed against the metal. A hand shot over his shoulder. Long, clawed fingers gripped his arm. Too cold, too strong. Ryan choked on his own breath, wrenching himself away as he shoved the door open and stumbled out into the night. He hit the ground hard, knees scraping against gravel, but he didn't stop. He scrambled to his feet and ran. The forest loomed around him, the gnarled branches reaching like skeletal fingers. The sound of footsteps followed, too many, too fast. He didn't dare look back. His pulse pounded in his ears as he sprinted deeper into the trees. The air was thick with rot, the shadows shifting unnaturally. Then, silence. Ryan stopped, chest heaving, hands on his knees. His ears rang with the absence of sound. No wind, no footsteps. Nothing. Slowly he turned, and there she was, standing inches away. Her face was no longer stretched into a grin. It was worse. Her mouth was wrong, gaping open like a dark, endless hole. A hole filled with something writhing, twitching, moving. Ryan stumbled backward. A strangled scream caught in his throat. But the moment he moved, she reached out. Her hand clamped onto his wrist, cold, wet, impossibly strong. He struggled, kicked, but she didn't let go. The ground beneath him gave way. He was falling into the darkness of her mouth. Morning came with a soft glow over the deserted road. The van sat perfectly still, the doors slightly ajar. No signs of struggle, no footprints, just the eerie silence of the forest. A passerby found the van later that day, engine dead, keys still in the ignition. But Ryan? Ryan was never seen again. Some say his van still appears on that road, parked in the exact same spot. Sometimes, late at night, drivers claim to see a figure standing beside it. A woman in white, hood pulled low. And if you ever stop, if you ever look too long, you might hear a whisper from the darkness. You shouldn't have taken the left.